Christmas didn't appear fully formed from heaven. It was built slowly, layer by layer, from ancient festivals, political strategy, and our shared longing for light in dark times. In this episode, we peel back the mythology to uncover the real origins of Christmas and explore why understanding its human roots actually makes the season more meaningful. Welcome to another bonus edition of the MTB Podcast, a segment of the weekly episode that I call Afterthoughts. This is my favorite part of these weekly presentations because it gives me a chance to dig a little deeper into something that came up during the main episode. Now, let's talk about Christmas. Not the sentimental Hallmark version, and not the baby Jesus glowing softly in a manger version, and not even the capitalism in a Santa suit version. I mean the real origins of Christmas, where it actually came from, how it was assembled piece by piece, and why it looks the way it does today. Because here's the truth. Christmas did not begin the way most people think it did. The early Christians weren't sitting around saying, "Let's celebrate Jesus' birthday every December 25th." In fact, for the first couple centuries of Christianity, nobody really cared about Jesus' birthday at all. It wasn't even really on their radar. The crucifixion and resurrection, well, they were everything. The birth stories were later additions, mythic, symbolic, written to make theological points, not historical ones. And yet here we are, centuries later, with a massive global holiday built on these stories, wrapped in lights, decorated with trees, and fueled by enough sugar to power a small nation state. So what happened? How did this incredibly complex holiday get built? And why is it such a beautiful, bizarre, and deeply human mosaic of traditions? So let's dive into that in this episode of Afterthoughts. One of the first surprises in this story is that the earliest followers of Jesus didn't really care about his birth at all. If you read Paul's letters at the earliest Christian writings, there's nothing about Bethlehem, Mary, angels, shepherds, or a manger. Not a word. Why? Because early Christianity wasn't about celebrating Jesus' life. It was about explaining his death and claiming his resurrection. Those were the big selling points. Birth narratives came decades later, and they were wildly different depending upon who wrote them. Matthew invented one version to appeal to Jewish audiences, right, complete with genealogies and Old Testament callbacks. Well, Luke invented another version that was tailored more for the Gentiles. It was full of shepherds, angels, and cosmic peace. Yet these stories contradict each other in almost every way. Different genealogies, different timelines, different characters, hell, different birthplaces. But early Christians weren't trying to write history. They were crafting their identity. They were telling stories to express meaning. And meaning doesn't have to be factual in order to feel true. So if the earliest Christians didn't care about Jesus' birthday, how did we end up with Christmas? Well, here's where it gets fun. Long before Jesus, December was already the party month in the ancient world. The Romans, who controlled most of the Mediterranean, celebrated Saturnalia from December 17th through December 23rd. Think of it as the ancient version of, office holiday parties, gift exchanges, eating way too much, drinking way too much, staying up too late, and pretending work doesn't really exist. Saturnalia was joyful, it was chaotic, and deeply beloved. Then, on December 25th, the Romans celebrated Sol Invictus, the festival of the unconquered sun, S-U-N, marking the winter solstice. The light was returning. The days would start growing longer. It symbolized hope in the darkness. Now imagine early Christians living inside this culture. Everyone around them was feasting, exchanging gifts, lighting fires, decorating homes, and celebrating light's return. And Christians are, what, sitting quietly and ignoring the fun? Not likely. So the church did what dominant religions have always done. They absorbed the popular festival. They rebranded it and grafted their story onto it. You're celebrating the return of the sun? Well, we celebrate the birth of the true light, Jesus, not the S-U-N, the S-O-N, Son. December 25th became the date to celebrate Jesus' birth because it was already meaningful to the culture. This wasn't a revelation from heaven. It was just brilliant marketing. On top of the cultural absorption, there was also political motivation. When Emperor Constantine embraced Christianity in the 4th century, the empire was huge, it was diverse, and it was fracturing. A unified religion with unified holidays created the social cohesion that Constantine wanted. December 25th served as a shared celebration, a symbolic merging of pagan and Christian identity, a way to bring people together under one banner. Right? The early church leaders were kind of smart. They didn't try to erase beloved traditions, because that almost never works. They reframed those traditions. And if you look around today, Christmas still functions the same way. A blending of old memories, cultural habits, and newer beliefs. Now let's talk about the nativity stories themselves. Matthew and Luke. These were not eyewitness accounts. They were mythological storytelling designed to answer certain questions. Who is Jesus? Why should we trust him? How does he fit into Jewish prophecy? How does he fit into Greek philosophical ideas of divine reason? How can we appeal to culturally different audiences? Matthew emphasized prophecy fulfillment because his readers cared about Jewish tradition. Luke emphasized shepherds and angels because his readers loved more dramatic divine intervention. And then John came along and said, forget shepherds and magi. Jesus existed before the universe began. Right? That's where we get the logos, the cosmic poetry about light shining in the darkness. These stories weren't about journalism. They were about meaning making. The same process humans have used in every culture to tell our deepest truths through metaphor and myth. This is what I find so fascinating. The Nativity wasn't handed down from heaven. It developed the same way every origin story develops, through imagination, cultural borrowing, and the need to explain who we are. Now let's talk about the traditions many people think are biblical. And spoiler alert, they're not. Right, the Christmas tree. Germanic and Celtic peoples used evergreens to symbolize life, surviving the winter. Christians didn't invent the Christmas tree, they just adopted it. The Yule log. That's a Scandinavian tradition. A giant log burned to bring warmth, safety, and renewal. Again, not Christian. Gift giving. Yes, Christians like to point to the Magi, but the real source is, as I mentioned earlier, Saturnalia, where gifts were exchanged freely as part of this ongoing festival. Christmas carols. Guess what? The earliest ones, they just began as folk songs or tunes with secular roots, things that were already familiar to people. And Santa Claus, it's a mashup of St. Nicholas, maybe, but Dutch Sinterklaas, Norse Odin, Victorian literature, and of course the Coca-Cola advertising, right? Santa Claus is a mashup. Christmas is not a single story. It's a cultural collage. And honestly, I think that makes it better. What that means is Christmas grew out of humanity's deep desire for light, warmth, generosity, and connection during the darkest part of the year. Well, at least in the northern hemisphere. Now, when we zoom out, it becomes clear why the early church latched onto these midwinter themes. Right? Light shining in darkness, new beginnings, hope during the coldest season. Well, these are powerful metaphors for transformation, which is exactly what Christianity was selling. Adopting December 25th wasn't a theological decision. It was a strategic one. Culturally, politically, and emotionally. But here's perhaps the key insight. Christianity didn't invent the meaning of Christmas. It borrowed it from the oldest human instincts. Humans have always gathered in winter to remind each other that we won't perish in the dark, to remind each other that the light will return, that community sustains us, and that generosity gives our lives meaning. Christianity simply placed Jesus into that very old story. Once you strip away the supernatural trappings, the heart of Christmas becomes even clearer and honestly more beautiful. Christmas is about connection, generosity, reflection, shared hope, celebrating small wins in dark times, choosing guiding values, imagining renewal, and leaning into the belief that we can grow, transform, and help each other flourish. You don't need miracles for any of that. You don't need angels or cosmic prophecies. You just need people. People who choose to care, to nurture joy, and to carry light into someone else's darkness. That is the real miracle of Christmas. Not divine intervention, but human potential. Look, understanding the invention of Christmas doesn't ruin the holiday. In fact, it liberates the holiday, because when you realize Christmas wasn't handed down from heaven, but it was built by human hands, you suddenly have the permission to let the holiday evolve in ways that are meaningful to you. You can celebrate secular joy without guilt. You can lean into values instead of into dogma. You can let the holiday be about your real life, not about some ancient myth. And if we look at the themes in the Christmas Day readings, hope, guiding principles, and human transformation, we can see that all of these things came from us. It came from human longing, human imagination, human kindness. We are the ones who keep the lights glowing. We are the ones who give the season its meaning. We are the ones who carry forward the tradition of celebrating light in dark times. Christmas is human through and through, and that makes it something worth embracing. So, as I wrap this up, here's the beautiful thing about all of this. Christmas didn't descend from the sky by some divine decree. It grew slowly, organically, from humanity's oldest desires. Warmth, connection, renewal, and the assurance that darkness doesn't get the last word. Understanding the real story behind Christmas doesn't diminish the holiday. It makes it richer and more honest, and it makes it more ours. So, however you celebrate this season, through family gatherings, quiet reflection, generosity, community work, or simply enjoying lights on a cold night. Remember this: the magic of Christmas is not supernatural. The magic of Christmas is human. It's us. And it always has been. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Afterthoughts. If you want to keep up on everything I'm doing, please head over to thecodaproject.com and subscribe to my newsletter. You'll get notifications whenever I publish anything, and I'll also keep you updated on the weekly live streams of Mythologizing the Bible. If you subscribe for free over at The Coda Project, you'll start receiving my publication called The Weekly Compass. This is a brief guide on a single core value. Think of it as a mini lesson plan for personal growth. It's perfect for families, students, and adults because I include discussion questions designed for each age group. As a subscriber, you'll also have access to the Guide to Kitchen Table Activism, which is a detailed resource designed to help you be politically active from your own home. The guide explains why activism is important, the philosophy behind kitchen table activism, and the foundational values it supports, before laying out how to use the tools you have to make your voice heard. The guide provides tools, tactics, and templates for you to use, and it only takes 15 minutes a week. If you care about our democracy, our country, and our world, then I encourage you to check it out. While you're at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you'll start receiving my newsletter called The Kitchen Table Activist. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, remember to question everything, keep what's good, and live what matters.